So here's a quick demo to show our current Nuke to Mari workflow. Once you've got all the files installed, you'll find a new Mari menu in Nuke, which will enable you to launch Mari, import projections from disk, and export projections to disk. But most importantly, you'll be able to send projections straight into an existing Mari session. There's also going to be a new toolbar if that's what you prefer. And in the project settings, there'll be a new Mari tab with network settings that will enable you to tweak your connection between Nuke and Mari, as well as enable two different machines on the network to take advantage of this workflow. So you can run Nuke on one machine and Mari on the other and still use this. And at the bottom you'll find the Mari data directory, which will hold all the data that's sent from Nuke to Mari and back, which will be EXRs and geometry. So that defaults to the name Mari data, and it'll live in your current Nuke scripts location. So let's just go ahead and launch Mari. Because I haven't set the Mari install path environment variable, Nuke doesn't know where Mari is, so we need to tell it. So it's a good idea to set that environment variable to avoid that file browser. And here we are. There's only one thing you need to do in Mari to ensure that this workflow will work, and that's in Edit, Preferences, in the Script section, make sure the enabled checkbox under Command Port is active, and that will enable Mari to listen to incoming Nuke commands. So with that set, we can go back to Nuke and select our Project 3D node, which is what this whole workflow is based on. And because we're about to start a new Mari project, we also have to give it at least one piece of geometry, so I'll select the Read Geo node as well. Now in the Mari menu, go to Send Projection Components. This will pre-render the image to make sure it's a half-float linear light EXR with a bounding box that's compatible with Mari, and put all that into the into the Mari data directory, and send it all over to Mari. Mari now wants to know if we want to bake the incoming projection. I'm going to hit no. And because we're starting a new project, we also have to create a new channel. So we have to give it a name and the texture resolution. I'm just going to go with 2K by 2K, which is not a whole lot, but will be fine for this workflow, at least for the demo. So that'll create a new Mari project that's called the same as the Nuke project. Import the geometry and create a projector that is named after the projecting camera in Nuke, followed by the frame that the projection was exported on. So once you've got all that in Nuke, you can now, oops, I just accidentally baked, which I didn't mean to. Let's undo so it's back in the paint buffer. And the reason I chose not to bake in the beginning was that I'm still able at this point, right, when the projection comes in, that I'm still able to use Mari's warp tools, like so. So that's great for doing lineups of textures to geometry, to just tweak that lineup to make sure it's all working fine. I'm just going to be silly to demo it here. And another thing we're going to be doing is just add another couple of windows. So we'll just grab the clone stamp tool and clone that window over here. Oops, there you go. And I'll just do the same down here. Just so you get the idea of what we're trying to achieve here. So now that we've got our texture all patched up and everything, we can now send the whole thing back to Nuke. So in the Nuke menu, I'm going to go to Send Projection Texture, and that will send the projection texture of our current projector. So it'll unproject the texture from the geometry, and once it's done, it'll send it all over back to Nuke. And because Mari only exports squared unprojected textures, we'll have to reformat it to make sure our projection setup in Nuke still lines up. So with all those things back in place, we can now hook up our project 3D node to our new texture coming from Mari, like so. Note that we're seeing the same colors as in Nuke, which is achieved by pre-rendering the EXRs into linear light and also sending the current viewer LUT over. So let's say I change my mind, or the pipeline's changed in the middle of this, and we're now all working on Rec 709 and everything goes darker. I can just go to Mari, send LUT, and that will send the current viewer LUT over to Mari to make sure what you see in Mari matches what you see in Nuke. But for now, let's just go back to sRGB, Mari, send LUT. This happens automatically when you send a projection anyway. So now, obviously, we have a whole bunch of holes that we need to patch up, and we've got a whole bunch of projectors lined up here, the cameras with their respective textures. So I'm just going to select all the project 3D nodes here on the side, and go back to Mari, send projection components, and send them all over into my existing Mari project. So you'll see the pre-rendering of the EXRs happening again. And once that's done, we'll be asked if we want to bake the texture in Mari again. In this case, we do. And now we can watch the incoming projectors build up in the projectors palette, as well as their images appear in the image manager. So here we are with all the projections in place, and you can see that a lot of holes have now been fixed, but we are also seeing a lot of artifacts because we've pretty randomly just slapped projections on top of each other. So let's go back to our first projector that is sort of looking at that top area here where a lot of those projections overlap, so they actually create some artifacting, and we'll just project this whole view again to patch it all up in one go. Like that. And now we can go in and do some touch-up work, like getting rid of those streaky bits here, for example. And yeah, you basically do whatever you need to do in Mari. Let's say that's all we need to do. And because this texture is now a combination of all sorts of projections from different angles, obviously we can't extract a single projection texture from this anymore. So in this case, we're going to export the UV texture. So in the Nuke menu, go to Send UV Texture, and this will extract the UV texture at the resolution we specified in the beginning when we started the project. So in this case, it'll be a 2K by 2K texture. And because it is a UV texture, as you can see, we don't have to project anymore, and we can actually simplify our setup by simply plugging the UV texture straight into our geometry. So now looking at our shot camera, that kind of hones in on that letterbox or whatever it is. Let's say we need a high-res image on that letterbox. And this time we're actually just going to start from scratch in Mari. So I want to use this texture that I've already got loaded in Nuke in Mari. So I'm going to select the read node and go to Mari, send read nodes selected, which will put it into Mari's image manager. And I'm going to just zoom into that letterboxy thing and use the paint through tool to paint through that face onto that letterbox. But you'll see, because we only specified a 2K by 2K texture resolution in the beginning, this is going to be really low res, so it's not really worth doing. So what I'm going to do is go to channels and create a new channel. I've already got my previous setting in there, so I'm going to call it graffiti, and I'm really going to bump up the texture size this time to 16 by 16K, make it half float RGBA. It's a color, not a scalar, and we're giving it a transparent alpha channel. Hit OK. And once that new channel is set up, we can actually paint our face into that new channel, which now has an overhead of 16K, so we're getting the actual resolution out of it. And now we've got that face on the letterbox. But we obviously don't want to unwrap the whole 16K by 16K texture map just to get this face here. And we also don't have a projector for it. So what we're just going to do, we'll zoom in to a feasible perpendicular kind of view, and then in the Nuke menu we'll go to send current view, which will create a projector from the current view and send the whole thing over as a projection setup. So now that we've got our low-res UV and our high-res projection, which is really only photographing and rendering what we need, we can now merge those two together using a merge material node. And here we are. Obviously you can export any existing projectors through the same menu, just simply using either send current projector or send all projectors. All of these options you can also find in the export menu. This will open a file browser and actually ask you where to save it, and then you can use the respective import projection menu in Nuke to pull that in case you don't want to use this socket connection. Now let's have a quick look at the sequence projection. So here's a simple setup that has a handheld sort of orbital camera move around that camera box. And let's say we want to start removing the espresso can in front of it. So let's say frame 48 is where the right hand side of the camera box is clear of the can, so that's a good one to keep in mind. And let's say frame let's go to frame 100. Frame 100 seems to have the whole left side intact. So this is really almost the same as what we've done before, except you can extract static projections from animation cameras. So let's just see what this actually does in Nuke. So we've got our match move camera here projecting its own texture, its own plate onto a card that is lined up to where that camera box was in space. So now, just like before, we'll select the project 3D node and the card node and go to Mari, send. This time we'll choose sequence projections, and here you can enter a frame range and an increment if you want to, let's say in this case, send every 58th frame. This defaults to 3 frames per sequence in our frame range. If you want to send those over, if you want to send every 10th frame in 200 frames or whatever. In this case we actually know that I think, what was it, 40 something, 42 and frame 100 are the 2 frames we are interested in, so we'll hit OK. The 2 frames are extracted from our animation camera. We'll bake them in Mari into a channel that's 2K in resolution. And we'll see the 2 projectors come in extracted at those respective frames. So here we are, and because we also got those images loaded in the image manager, we can now go back to our camera 1, or at frame 42, the projection at frame 42, and use our paint through tool to paint through just frame 42 again. So I'm just going to drag that in here, scale that so it kind of matches the size of the texture on the box, and just paint through the right hand side of our label probably should be using a soft brush for this, but you'll get the idea. So this gives us the clean texture, and just like before, we can now just send that over as a UV texture. And apply that to our card. So here's our card that has the can removed, and we can now put that on top of our original sequence as a starting point to remove this can. So this is a good workflow to get going on rig removal that can benefit of projection setups. And that's pretty much it for now. I'm sure there's heaps more features we can implement in the future, but that's our first stab at it.